Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Bootleg, a Tennessean high school football weekly production here. We're second week in the playoffs. This show is brought to you by Farm Bureau Health Plans. Without their support, we cannot do shows like this. We have a special treat today. We're going statewide today. We've got all of our, or at least the majority of our high school riders across the state on with us today, from Knoxville to Jackson. We've got it covered. We're going to talk high school football playoffs, a look back at week one, and then a look ahead to week two of the playoffs. And we're going to be joined now by Team Tennessee, all of my high school riders from across the state. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the show. For Joe, this is something normal. For Steve, who's been on the show. George has been on the show. First times for both Emily Adams, our high school reporter in Knoxville, and Jerrod Hamilton in Jackson at the Jackson Sun. Welcome aboard, and we're going to get right into it. Let's go right into it. We're going to look back at week one of the playoffs. What was the biggest surprise that you had for week one? I will go first. I think there was a point in the season when Mount Juliet was 6-0, and I really thought during the season that they might be one of a few favorites to make a deep playoff run, maybe make it the semifinals or better. But Joe Spears and I saw them lose to Station Camp in for their first loss of the season. They were ranked number one at the time, and after that they didn't win another game. I think they lost 5 straight, including a loss to Columbia in the first round. Kind of a stunner for me. I thought this is a team that really could make a good run. I think that there are some pieces in place where they can recover next year, and of course this is in 5A. So that to me was my surprise of week one. Joe Spears, we'll go with you.
Yeah, I mean, I look at Brentwood, especially after how they started the season. They were 1-4. Things seemed to kind of be falling apart, it looked like at times, but they've rebounded really well. They've won 6 straight, including last week. They go out to Memphis, get a 3-point win out there without Aaron Walton. He's out injured right now, and they're playing really well. I mean, Davis White played really well in that game, 242 yards, 3 touchdowns. And Clayton Merrill kind of stepped up in Walton's place. He had 78 yards and 11 receptions. So the Bruins are playing well at the right time, just kind of like what they did last year, right? They got on that playoff run last year as well. So it'll be interesting to see what they do this week against Summit.
That was a last-second field goal. As time ran out there again to beat Germantown. Don't know this with 100% certainty, but I believe that Merrill is related to Walker Merrill, the Tennessee freshman wide receiver who, of course, was at Brentwood. I'm guessing that they're related. I haven't looked into that. But, of course, Brentwood goes to Summit this week. We'll talk about that game a little bit later. George Robinson, what do you have? What was your big surprise? You had some of the surprise of the week.
Yeah, Clarksville High winning, going to Cane Ridge and beating a very good 1 seed in Cane Ridge Friday night. A little bit of a surprise, just considering that Clarksville's been so one-dimensional this year in their running game. They don't really have a quarterback. They've had to convert one of their running backs into a quarterback, and they really don't have a passing game because of that. But they run the ball really, really well, and they did that Friday night against Cane Ridge. I mean, they had both their quarterback, who is essentially a running back, had over 100 yards rushing, and then another running back they had, and Rayshawn Bowling, also had over 100 yards rushing, and both of those guys had 2 touchdowns each. So, a little bit of a shocker. I mean, I think the assumption is that Montgomery County can't really play football that well. They do win and play. They do okay in the first round. Some of the teams in Montgomery County can win the second round. I mean, Clarksville, was a second round team last year. Northeast was a state quarterfinalist last year. I think a lot of people kind of forget that. But Montgomery County isn't making state championship games, so I think that's usually that's the knock on Montgomery County in high school football. So yeah, I mean, Clarksville beating Cane Ridge and getting to the second round, a little bit of a shocker, considering the kind of game that Clarksville has to play in order to win.
Oh, you're on mute, Tom.
We're going to move on to Jerrod Hamilton of the Jackson Sun. Jerrod, first, welcome to the show. First time appearance by Mr. Hamilton. And what was your surprise of the first round of the playoffs in West Tennessee?
My surprise of the first round was Humboldt beating Memphis Middle College, and it's kind of surprising for multiple reasons. I mean, Humboldt started the season 1-4. They allow their opponents to score 34 points per game, and so they beat an 8-0 Memphis Middle College team, and it was tied 8-8 at half, and then they scored 23 unanswered points to win 31-8. Humboldt, I mean, they got in as the fourth seed. They were struggling to get that, but I mean, the two behind them, it was easier to kind of beat them out, but they were definitely struggling. And now they've won 2 in a row, but definitely Humboldt going to Memphis Middle College and getting the win there.
I think they go to Lake County, another big test for them this week, so we'll see what they do. Heading out to Knoxville, Emily Adams, what do you got for a first round surprise?
Well, we had a big upset here in the East. Farragut beat Science Hill, which was a 1 seed, 57-56 in double overtime. Farragut is one of those teams that's kind of been confusing all year. They, have beaten your South Doyles and, your Beardens, but, they lost to Fulton and they lost by just a little bit to Bradley Central, who they play this week. So it's been hard to kind of get a gauge on whether they're good or not, but they sure looked good against Science Hill. Their quarterback, Dawson Moore, had one of his best games of the year. He had 2 passing touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns, 284 passing yards, 81 rushing yards. And they have a pretty strong receiving core as well that, when Moore is hitting, does really well and scores a lot of points. So, Bradley Central is who they play this week and is obviously a big favorite, but I wouldn't rule out another upset for them this week.
And Farragut really had a win to get in. I mean, that week 11 there, they were outside looking in there too. So it was a big couple weeks for the Admirals at Farragut to be where they're at, second round of the playoffs, and traveling to Bradley. They'll be road warriors throughout the playoffs as long as they're in it, but definitely was an intriguing score. And for Maryville, this means Maryville will be home throughout the playoffs until possibly, if they make it to the championship game, that'd be the only time they travel, with Science Hill getting beat as well. So that's probably the interesting fact with Science Hill getting beat. Great transition from Maryville to Murfreesboro. Cecil Joyce, what do you have? What was the upset you had, or I guess the surprise you had in the first round of the playoffs?
Well, there won't be any Maryville transitioning here or Oakland transitioning because there was no surprise with what Oakland did. Gallatin beating Smyrna, and not just beating Smyrna, but beating Smyrna how they did. That is my biggest surprise. They manhandled the Bulldogs up front, kept the time of possession, dominated the time of possession probably by more than double. This might not be a surprise to those in Sumner County, but it surely was to folks in Rutherford County and folks in Smyrna. I think Matt Williams from Smyrna was the only one after the game that told me he wasn't surprised by what happened. He tried to warn his team that Gallatin was a lot better than 4-5, and Smyrna found out the hard way. Kind of piggybacking off of what George said, I think Region 5, 6A really exposed Region 6, 6A. I mean, a clean sweep for Region 5. And, for the last 4 or 5 years, the biggest gripe with the teams that are in Region 6, 6A was that they had to play Williamson County teams in the first round and, sayonara. But, today, this past week, it was, a different region, different set of teams, and it was the same result. So it was tough. It was tough sledding for Region 6.
One other surprise piggybacking on that, I want to mention congrats to Cannon County. First playoff win since 1978. That's a big drought. And also here locally, or in Rutherford, or in Middle Tennessee, Summertown won their first ever playoff game, which they've only been playing football since about 2015, so it hasn't been a big drought. One and out workaround. I'm going to start with Emily. where are we going this week? And give me a little synopsis about that game.
Yeah, so I will be at Powell McMinn County this week. McMinn County's playing at Powell. I'm sure most of our audience knows Walter Nolan, the 5-star defensive lineman from Powell, committed over the weekend to Texas A&M. So the Vols lose out on that one. Tennessee was in his top 3. But the Powell has been really good when they're really good, and really bad when they're really bad. So it'll be interesting to see with a team like McMinn County, who, is not one of the top teams in the area, but is kind of sneakily challenging. The big player to watch, especially on Powell's side, is quarterback Jordan Potts. He is elite when he's having a good day, but if he starts throwing interceptions, that's where McMinn County will be able to take advantage. So should be an interesting matchup.
And that's a team with Potts there throwing at quarterback. They got a couple good receivers. That's a team that a lot of us think can make a deep run in the 5A playoffs. It'll be interesting if they can advance and not get caught with a bad game. So, Joe Spears, right now, where are you headed to? I know this could change, but where are you headed to right now?
Right now, my plan is to be at Brentwood Academy for Pope John Paul Brentwood Academy. Kind of a game of two contrasting styles. You got Brentwood Academy, who defensively has just been really good all season, and the Eagles have played well since that NBA loss a couple weeks ago. They only played 3 times in October, though, so that'll be interesting to see how they kind of transition from that. And then you got Pope John Paul. They've lost 2 of their last 5 games, but they're still averaging close to 30 points per game. So, if Brentwood Academy is going to have a week where they could maybe put up some points, it would maybe be this week. You probably don't want to get it into a shootout against Kenny Minchie and that Knights offense. So, even in those losses, they're still putting up a ton of points. So, that should be a really interesting D2 AAA game. And right now you look at it, that one's a toss-up because you just don't know which Pope John Paul team's going to come out. And you kind of got an idea what Brentwood Academy team can come out of that. So.
And so that's a rematch from last year. I think opening or second round game last year. So it's an interesting game there. And Kenny Minchie made some big throws. I remember in that game last year. I thought I had heard that Pope John Paul's running back might be out for the year. He heard that was Ethan Raw, but he came back last week. So that's a good whatever intel that was bad intel on my end, but. Good to see Ethan Raw back, and that gives them a good running game there, and can help with Minchie, who really is more of a drop back passer than any of our top junior quarterbacks. He's not really a guy that wants to go out and take off running, but he can. But he would prefer to sit there just sling the football around. George Robinson, where are you at?
Well, I only have 2 choices in Montgomery County. The only 2 teams that won last week were Montgomery Central. They play at Tullahoma, but the game that the Montgomery Central Tullahoma game will probably be the most competitive. But the game that particular game is probably a little too far for me to go to. So the game I will be at this Friday will be Clarksville at Beach, and that obviously is the Region 5 6A matchup between those 2 region teams. And it was a mismatch last time they played. I think Beach won like 40-7 in September. So that's the game I will be at. I don't know that Clarksville is going to be able to bring any of that magic that they were able to get. They were able to kind of muster against Cane Ridge and bring that to Beach. I think Beach is they're just too talented. They have a really, really good, short, fast, quick running back in Patrick Hill, who's just terrible trying to tackle him. He's like a little bowling ball, really. And then they got the Page kid at wide receiver, Andrew Page, I think is his name. Just a big, tall, 6'5", 6'6" guy. Former basketball. He still plays basketball, but he's really a football guy now. Who's been playing really well. And like I said, Beach dominated Clarksville a couple of months ago, and I kind of see the same thing, happening again this week. I just don't know that Clarksville has enough horses to hang with Beach. So it'll be, but I'm definitely going to keep an eye on that Central Tullahoma game. Like I said, I think that's probably going to be a little bit more competitive game. Tullahoma has already beat Montgomery Central, but Montgomery Central plays very good defense. They play good defense on the road as well, and I think. Yeah, I don't think Montgomery Central is going to win, but I certainly think it's going to be much more competitive. And maybe if they hang around in the fourth quarter, maybe they got a shot.
Okay. Great analysis there. Jerrod, Hamilton, where are you headed to?
I will be going to Savannah, Tennessee, as Pearl Cone from Nashville will travel to see Hardin County. So big-time matchup. Got Barry and Brown, 4-star prospect, going against 3-star prospect Caden Pope. I mean, Caden Pope and Carter Smith, the sophomore quarterback, have really connected well this season. Carter Smith basically picked up where Rivers Hunt left off last year. So their connection, there's not really a drop-off for Pope this year. The interesting thing for me this week will be there's been a couple games this year where Hardin has, of course, they went 10-0, but Hardin has won a couple games without Pope being involved, like last week. 1 catch for 1 yard. Even though they won 28-0, they could have sat him out early or something like that. But there's been a couple games where they've been able to win without him. But I would think, especially in this big primetime matchup, they're trying to use him more in the wide receiver game. And then also, maybe he's seeing double teams. I don't know, but they also got Seth Gardner, who's a baseball prospect, committing real soon. I forgot where he's coming to. I think it's Memphis maybe, but he's a great safety. Definitely helps them also in the receiving game as well. So it'd be kind of interesting to see if Pope can get off to a quick start versus Pearl Cone team.
Okay. Cecil Joyce.
Tom, are you a fan of defense?
I'm a fan of any game that can go over by about 9 o'clock on a Friday night. So.
Well, my game is going to be the game to be at if you're a fan of defense. I'm going to Riverdale at Lebanon, second-round matchup. The Blue Devils are number 1 seed out of Region 3. The Warriors are number 2 seed out of Region 4. Those two teams have played good defense all year. Riverdale's held opponents to 7 points or less in 9 of their 11 games. Lebanon had 3 consecutive shutouts entering the playoffs and then held Stewart's Creek without any offensive points last week in a 42-7 win. A block punt return was the only score Stewart's Creek got. So that this is just shaping up to be the under pick of the week. Not to say neither team can muster a little bit of offense, but with both defenses playing the way they are, I would definitely bet the under if you're a high school betting guy. Riverdale's got just loaded on defense. They've got a Tennessee commitment in Elijah Herring. His younger brother Caleb Herring has multiple Power 5 offers. Alex Mitchell, a senior linebacker, a Georgetown commitment. He may be the best of the bunch as far as how they're playing right now. So they're just loaded. Lebanon's gotten it done on both sides of the field. Their quarterback, Jalen Apston, threw for 275 yards against Stewart's Creek last week. That was impressive. So Riverdale's going to have their work cut out for them for sure if they're expecting to get to a quarterfinal matchup and a potential matchup against Oakland again.
Folks, you've been watching the bootleg presented by Farm Bureau Health Plans. Maybe we should get the secondary sponsorship by FanDuel for high school sports there with the under picks of the week there. So I am headed to Summit to watch Summit host Brentwood in a rematch of a 7-6A game earlier this season. Of course, Summit won that game 27-14, and it was really one of the best Region 7 6A games that Summit has had. I mean, Brentwood really played them well. They played the run really well. I expect them to play the run well again this week. You've got 2 Mr. Football semifinalists at that game and 4-star prospects, Destin Wade at quarterback, Keaton Wade at linebacker, and of course he'll also play a little bit in the backfield at running back. Those guys are, of course, committed to Kentucky. I'll be working on a story on them for later in the week. So stay tuned on Tennessean.com for that. I think it's a game where, like Joe had said earlier, that Brentwood's come a long way. They started really slow. I think they lost to Blackman in the early part of the season. They lost to Father Ryan early in the season, and they've won like 6 games in a row. One last week without Aaron Walton. I don't know his status. I think he's a really tough kid. So if there's anyone that could play Friday night with a shoulder injury, it would probably be him if it's possible. I think the big matchup is going to be how can they slow down the run game of Destin Wade. I mean, obviously he's a dual threat guy that likes to run the ball. They look like, when I've seen them play, they look like men playing against boys. I mean, they're just so huge. I mean, they're big high school seniors that look like they're ready for college. But, Brentwood did a great job slowing them down last time. I think that's a great game, and whoever wins that game would play the winner of Ravenwood-Collierville. Ravenwood fans should not pencil, be ready to go back to Williamson County and play a quarterfinal game just yet, because Collierville, which beat Independence in the first round, is a very talented team. They're kind of on a mission this year. Of course, everyone knows in the Collierville area, they had the shooting in the Kreager area, and that team's kind of rallied around that community, and it's been a great story to watch of how this Collierville team's kind of picking up that community with their season that they've had. Of course, as I'm going to bring back the rest of our team, of course, you can read all of our stuff on our websites. Jerrod is on jacksonsun.com. George Robinson's at Relief Chronicle. Joe Spears, of course, in the Tennessean. Emily Adams on Prep Extra, part of the Knoxville News Sentinel, and Cecil Joyce at the DNJ. And folks, appreciate you joining us. Probably bring you on next week to see how we did with our games, see what surprises we have. We've got a few minutes, so I'm going to give you guys one more chance to add one more impromptu question here. Take out Alcoa, because we all picked Alcoa to win. Give me one sure bet. If you were a betting man, I'm not saying we're betting on anything, but if you had to pick one state champion in any class, which one is the surest thing in your eyes? It can be someone in your area or outside of your area. So, George, that allows you to pick something for us. Give us one sure pick that you would pick for a state champion in 2021, not named Alcoa.
For me?
Let's start with George.
Not named Alcoa. I would say Oakland.
Okay.
I'll go with Oakland. I think we kind of argued earlier in the week. I think Cecil was like, hey, don't forget about Oakland. The problem is that I always pick Oakland, and so I feel like I have to continue. I got to continue with that, right? I mean,
sure.
That's a safe pick. That's a safe pick.
All right, it's a safe pick. Jerrod, what do you have? What's your safe pick?
Safe. I'm gonna go with Westview. Ty Simpson and that offense has been looking real good since they lost to Peabody narrowly in like week 2. They've been clicking on all cylinders. So I'm gonna go Westview.
I will say this about Westview, and it's all about matchups and all that. I think the state fans in general across the state would love to see Westview at Chattanooga, just so everyone could see Ty Simpson play on a grand stage in person. That's kind of like that's one of the reasons why I would pick them to get to the championship game for sure, just because that gives everyone in the state a chance to see this kid play, because he's had such a great season. Emily Adams, what do you have as your sure pick to win?
I think I'm one of the only ones out of this group who picked them to win, but I'm very confident in Greenville. I think Greenville has been one of the most underrated teams in the state all year. They have blown out literally every team they've played. I don't think they've played a close game since week 1. Last week, I was curious because they played South Doyle, which has been inconsistently good for most of the year. They beat Fulton, who's really good. And after they tied it at 14-14 early in the game, Greenville went on a run and ended up beating them, I believe, 49-14. So I just can't think of a team that can hang with the scoring volume that Greenville has at this point.
Cecil, I think I know where you might go here, but Cecil, what do you have?
Actually, Emily stole mine, and no, Emily, you were not the only one who picked Greenville. After how they dismantled Elizabethan, Elizabethan's usually a pretty good pick to win the championship, but I can't go against Greenville. But since she said Greenville, I'm not going to say Oakland because George said Oakland, and I don't think even Kevin Creasy will admit there's no sure thing when you have to go through Maryville, and there's no telling who's going to come out of that West bracket, possibly Summit. I'm going to say Lipscomb Academy. And I'm going to say, I probably stole Tom's, but I'm going to say Lipscomb because I saw them play against Oakland and I saw how good they are and how easily they could have beaten Oakland. And then after seeing that CPA score, I just can't see, even as good a coached team as they are with Eagle Martin, I can't see CPA making up that many points in a championship game. They might, but I'm going to go with Lipscomb.
Joe Spears, I'll let you take mine. Go ahead and go with yours.
I was going with Lipscomb Academy, like I said last week. I've got something coming out of Lipscomb Academy later in the week, just kind of how this team came together. I mean, it's kind of an incredible roster when you really look at it. And Alex Broom and Luther Richardson are playing incredible football right now. And that defense, kind of like Cecil mentioned, they were my pick last week when we talked, Tom. I'm not going away from that pick. I think outside of Alcoa, this is as sure a pick as you can get to win a state, especially with what they did against CPA, who I think is probably the second best team in D2AA. So, the Mustangs, I think they have no issues winning their state championship this year.
Boy, decisions. I pick last, so I get the scraps if I want to do something different. I picked NBA to beat Macaulay, but I think Macaulay is probably the favorite there. But I'm going to go in 1A. I really like Fayetteville High School. The Tigers in Lincoln County, I think, will win that game. I think they have to beat Mackenzie and maybe Peabody to get to the finals. I think if they get through those two games, they'll probably get South Pitt. South Pitt's not South Pitt of maybe last year, just because they lost their coach like before the season really got going. So I picked Fayetteville Academy to win their second straight 1A. That's to me is probably one of the surest bets I can make. But I do like Lipscomb. I do like Greenville and 6A. I'm not going to commit to anything on 6A. I think there's three really good teams there that can win that. So, well, that's it for the Bootleg presented by Farm Bureau Health Plans. Thank you, Jerrod, George, Joe, Emily, and Cecil for joining us this week on a kind of a statewide look of the high school football playoffs. Until next week, we'll see you. Make sure you read all of our content. A lot of stuff coming out in the next few days as we go up to the playoffs. Happy signing day, one day early. Congrats to everyone that signs on Wednesday. And we'll see you next week on the Bootleg presented by Farm Bureau Health Plans.